playing the game, the one that will take me to my...
Welcome to Infected Mushroom's iWish plugin tutorial. iWish is a granular note freezer. The plugin samples the incoming audio, and when you hit a note, it plays part of it back as a loop. The loop is so short and plays so fast that it creates an audible pitch. The pitch is determined by the note played on your keyboard. Lower notes will produce longer loops, while higher notes will produce shorter loops. You may use the plugin to capture individual pitch cycles and repeat them, essentially freezing time. The iWish plugin is a MIDI effect and it needs an audio input to work, so I'll record some audio for the demonstration. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. I'm definitely not a singer, but this should do. Now I'll open an instrument track for iWish. I'm using Logic for this demo. If you're using Cubase or Live, please refer to our manual for instructions on how to load the plugin. And here I select iWish from the list of plugins. Open the plugin's interface and set the sidechain input to the audio track we just recorded. Mute the original track, as now the audio flows through our plugin. Converting vegetarians. Whenever I press a MIDI note, the plugin loops a small segment of the original audio. I will now play very low notes that will create relatively long loops so you can easily hear the process. Converting vegetarians. Whenever a note is played, the original audio is muted as the loop is introduced. Converting Playing higher notes will create smaller loops with a recognizable pitch. Converting vegetarians. You've probably noticed that some of the notes were not played on time. Instead of sampling the vowel as I intended, it samples some consonants or noise that was in the original audio. So now I will edit the MIDI notes in a way that they catch the right bits of audio to loop. So now the MIDI is edited, and I've also dragged the audio to fit the beat better, and this is the result. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. So far, this effect sounds like an extreme setting of some pitch correcting plugins on the market. But if we tune the MIDI an octave lower, a different, more granular sounding effect is achieved. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. If we use a different pitch than the original audio, it will impose that pitch as long as the note is playing, but it will not affect the dry signal, which will still play at the original pitch. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. There is a way for this plugin to impose any pitch on any piece of audio. This method involves playing fast repetitive notes. Each time a note is played, the audio is sampled again, essentially updating the wave shape of the oscillator. Using this method turns the plugin into a real-time wavetable synthesizer. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. And here is an example of a different pitch. Converting vegetarians. I can play any melody I like using my DAW's MIDI arpeggiator, which will automatically repeat any notes I play. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. Since we are using an arpeggiator, let's try playing chords and hear how that sounds. Converting vegetarians, converting vegetarians. Let's listen to the same effect using a drum loop. Here's the original loop. and here is the arpeggiated version of that loop. Let's have some fun and play with the parameters of the plugin. What you've seen up until now is just the tip of the iceberg. You can add glides, play chords, and even use the plugin as a synthesizer. You can check out our short demos for ideas on how to use the plugin, but we encourage you to experiment and come up with your own creative techniques. Let's walk through the controls of the plugin using a distorted guitar sound. This sound is great for use with the plugin since it has continuous audio with no silence in it. This way, there will always be usable audio for the plugin to sample. Let's record some MIDI. And now I'll just quantize my MIDI notes. If I use lower octaves, I can hear the individual cycles of the loop. As I increase the pitch control and shorten the loops, the pitch becomes more audible. The formant control changes the harmonic content of the loop by speeding up or slowing down the audio within the loop. While the loop keeps its original length, the audio inside the loop is being pitched up or down, much like oscillator sync on analog synthesizers. The link button connects the pitch and formant controls to move them both at the same time. When the link button is on, the pitch knob also controls the formant, while the formant knob is used to set the offset between the two controls. The pitch and the formant controls are quantized to semitones. If you want fine control over the parameters, press Shift while you move the knob. The knobs on the plugin may be controlled in a round mouse movement or a vertical mouse movement. To use the default round movement, click the center of the control and drag away and around the center. The farther you are from the center, the finer resolution and precision you will gain. You may also right-click the knob to select the vertical movement for an up-down drag method. However, I prefer the round method as it is more accurate. iWish has a special mechanism that smooths out the loop using a crossfade between its beginning and end. The crossfade control sets the speed of the crossfade. With no crossfade, the loop may click every cycle and sound grungy. Changing the crossfade's length smooths the loop gradually. Experiment with different crossfade lengths for different audio sources and needs. The amp section contains a simple envelope and a wet fader. The wet fader sets the balance between the dry signal and the synthesized sound. The dry signal is actually a gated version of the original audio, which is muted whenever a note is pressed. And that's exactly what we hear if we set the wet fader to 0. If we set the wet fader to maximum, we can use the plugin as a synthesizer. And when on 50%, you will hear both at the same level. The amplifier envelope controls both the amplitude of the notes played and, in an inverted manner, the amplitude of the dry signal. The envelope consists of an attack control, which can be clicked and dragged to the sides, and the release control. It is possible to change the values by clicking the text on the panel. Let's hear the amp envelope in action. Beware, setting the envelope values to 0 may introduce clicks into your sound. Let's look at our modulation section. On the right, we have our modulation envelope. It's not an ordinary envelope, it consists of two steps. The delay, which sets the amount of time it takes for the envelope to start working, and the decay, which sets the time it takes to reach maximum. You may also set the curve of the decay stage by dragging the middle section up and down. I'll now set the delay to be longer than the short notes, and this way the envelope will only affect the long notes. Now I'm setting the formant to rise as the pitch falls. And now both of them fall. It is also possible to link between the controls. If I set the delay to 0, the envelope will apply to all of the notes. The LFO has several controls. The fade control, which controls the length of a delay and fade in on the LFO, and the rate of the LFO. Just like the envelope, it is possible for the LFO to affect only the longer note by the use of the fade-in control. And now I'll modulate the pitch by using the top fader. The LFO can be retriggered every note. It can also be synced to tempo. The LFO has several waveforms: sine, triangle, saw, which can be used as saw down, or as saw up, square, random, and a smoothed random. The controls on the bottom of the synthesizer control general aspects of the plugin. The poly controls the amount of voices the plugin can play at the same time. On legato mode, the glide will occur only when notes are overlapped. On mono mode, glide will happen on all of the notes. The glide knob sets the time it takes for one note to glide to the other. The delay knob is actually a MIDI delay, which is used to better align the MIDI to the incoming audio. It has a special pitch mode that can be better demonstrated using a drum loop. Drum loops often have quiet bits between the drum hits. When you hit a key, the plugin plays a loop of the audio that just came before it. So if you play a note just as the drum hit starts, the drum hit will be replaced by a loop of the quiet audio that came before it. The pitch mode delays the MIDI by a whole pitch cycle just to sample the first little loop on the beat. This is what it sounds like with no delay. And this is what it sounds like with pitch mode on. By using the pitch wheel control, we can set the ranges of our pitch bender. Each direction has its own range setting. The plugin has a basic preset list used for transferring preset banks between different DAWs. You can save your presets and load them later. You can also load your friend's external preset banks. The presets are in XML format and can be edited using a text editor. However, we recommend using your DAW's preset manager for everyday preset needs. By right-clicking any parameter, you can assign MIDI control changes to that parameter. Auto-detect will assign the first controller you move to that parameter. You can also assign or unassign them manually. It is also possible to assign and unassign the modulation wheel to control the depth of the pitch LFO. This allows for a quick vibrato. That's it for this tutorial. We've just scratched the surface of what the plugin does, but you should now understand it better and be able to create your own truly one-of-a-kind sounds. Have fun freezing time.
I wish to give, to take, to make, to shake. I wanna see it happen.